Welcome to the video. Today I'll be ranking all Silksong bosses easiest to hardest. Two enemies slash bosses I won't include are the Craggler and the Summoned Savior. These rankings will also have tips and tricks on how to beat the bosses and just some good tool layouts you could use. The bosses will be ranked by their basic difficulty when they're encountered in the game. For example, Widow will be higher than a good amount of bosses, mainly because when you find Widow in the game, it's pretty tough as she's a very fast boss compared to faster bosses in Act 3 because you have more experience then and have better tools to deal with them. So in this case, Widow would be placed up much higher due to its earlier place and not having much experience fighting other bosses. So I say, let's get into the ranking. Starting off our list at number 46 is Garmin and Zaza. This fight is the simplest fight on here, with the boss having extremely high telegraph on every single attack they have, all single damage, and extremely high knockback. You could even knock the boss back into the spikes around the arena. This boss also is extremely low HP and not tough at all. You could usually beat it with no strategy, which makes this boss the easiest one. Next, we have Moss Mother, who's known as the tutorial boss. This boss is pretty simple, only has 3 attacks, and one of them is a variation of another. She'll rather dive down, do a sweep across the bottom, or bash her head against the ceiling and release some rocks, or a moss scrub. This fight's pretty simple, don't have many tools you could use, because the boss is so easy. I just recommend pogoing on it. This boss is a step up, because it can't be constantly just knocked back, but overall it's very easy. All single damage attacks, nothing to fret, not very aggressive. This boss is near the bottom of the barrel. At number 44, we have the Great Conch Flies. This fight is very fun in my opinion, but very simple. You fight them in the blasted steps. Yes, they do double damage on their main attack, which is going randomly popping out around the stage, but their other attack, which is the projectile that bounces around, only deals single damage. This fight isn't tough. They do have pretty good HP, but overall, you could easily dodge them due to their highly telegraphed attacks. And I'd say bring Sting Shard because they'll usually run into it, which could just be nice to grant some quick damage overall. This fight is pretty simple, and you could usually beat it on your first couple of tries. At number 43, we have the Fourth Chorus. This boss is one of the coolest bosses in my opinion, however, it's very easy. Yes, all the attacks for the boss are double damage, which can make it scary, but it's pretty simple, because the boss's attacks have a lot of telegraph, which means you could easily tell, oh, that's happening. The only thing I could say to bring first level would have to be Magma Bell, as the boss takes out platforms and there's lava below, which could just be nice and lead to not taking unnecessary damage, so it makes it a bit easier. Overall, this boss with its high telegraphed attacks and just not that tough overall, I'd say it deserves a spot. Number 42, we have Voltworm. This boss is down here mainly because it's Act 3 and it's way too easy. This boss just spams a lot of attacks that have okay area of effect, but nothing crazy. Yes, the boss is double damage, but it has pretty low HP and you could easily dodge 90% of the attacks after extremely long windup. There's not really a specific strategy for this fight except just look at the screen and don't be in any of the attacks, so I think it deserves one of the lower spots on this list. At number 41 and 40, we have the Skull Tyrants. I just combined these two as, yes, they're two different boss encounters, but it's pretty much the same fight, except for the second one having a scare factor. This boss is easy. Yes, you cannot poke on top of a boss, which can be annoying sometimes, and it all deals double damage, but overall, most of the attacks are pretty simple. It will jump at you, it will run at you, and there will be rocks falling down. This boss isn't tough. It is pretty tanky though, so that can be annoying, but Overall, I'd say not that bad, even in the scary encounter, which yeah, could get a hit off at first, but you could easily heal that back up. So I think it deserves the lower spots. At number 39, we have Plasmified Zango. This fight is pretty easy, mainly due to the boss only have 2 attacks where it just will spray out projectiles, and the speed will increase how far you are into the fight and will run at you. The only bad thing about this boss is it will continuously heal, so you have to get good burst damage. I'd recommend using a tool like the Cogwork Wheel, which could do really fast things of damage, and recommend Polyp Pouch a bit to just add on some extra. Another good tool would be Sting Shard, as Sting Shard deals solid damage, or maybe even Cog Flies if you like them more. Overall, this boss can deal a good amount of damage if you just keep him going, especially in his final thing where he'll just start spraying out projectiles really fast. But you could easily damage take it and take him out pretty quick. That's what deserves him the 39th spot. At number 38, we have Pale Stag. This boss isn't tough, it's just really annoying, with the boss not being able to get hit that frequently due to its constantly running away and teleporting, and it's spamming of very, very, very annoying projectiles. That's it. The only difficulty in the fight is the projectiles will just continuously build up, creating more as the fight goes on. You'll start trying to rush the fight, which could allow you to get hit. I recommend using tools like Sting Shard or Cog Flies, which allows you to just get closer to the boss and lay traps for the boss. Or maybe even tacks could be good, as the boss will run into them. But overall, this fight's just annoying and it deserves this low spot, mainly just to how long the fight drags on. At number 37, we have Dual Moss Mother. This fight's actually pretty fun at times due to just the chaos of both of them. However, it's Moss Mother, so the fight ends up being pretty easy. Especially because when they line up together, you could get a ton of silk. With them just lining up, you could hit both of them at once, which deals extra damage and allows you to get double silk. This fight can be a bit chaotic sometimes, with double rocks falling down and a ton of moss grubs on the floor, but you could usually tank the damage and just heal it back up, so it's not that tough. Even though there's 2 of them, it doesn't increase the difficulty that much. I'd recommend maybe using Sting Shard to just deal with the groups of them, and you could get good damage when they're lined up together. Overall, this makes the boss pretty simple. At number 36, we have the Crawfather. The Crawfather is one of my favorite fights in the game, however, it's easy because it's an act free. The fight starts out with it spawning a ton of different craws, almost like the Craw Arena in Act 1. However, then the big Crawfather steps out and he'll continuously spawn craws along with him. Overall, this fight's easy as the craws don't improve that much along the journey as you have. It can be a bit annoying at times, just due to them being a bit armored now, but I like the fight. But it's easy due to Crawfather only having 2 main attacks. Well, technically 3, because he could dive down, peck his beak, and summon chain spikes. But it could be a bit chaotic at times, but if you use a tool like the Trobio Claw Mirrors to just clear out the craws, or if you don't have that, I'd recommend using Sting Shard, as the craws will run into it and it'll deal extra damage. Maybe even Polyp Pouch to just use the poison effect on all of them. This makes the fight way less chaotic than it should be, and deserving of this ranking. At number 35, we have Gur the Outcast. Gur the Outcast is the hunter in Farloom, and for being an Act 3 boss, it's extremely disappointing. The fight's not that fun, and unlike the Crawfather, and for being a hunter, the guy's pretty weak. He only has 3 attacks while he'll run at you, throw little traps that will extend, and randomly have 3 things on the floor pop up to deal damage. Yes, everything deals double damage in this fight, but it's pretty easy to dodge most of them. I recommend using Cog Flies, and maybe you could use Sting Shard if the boss runs into them. Cog Flies are extremely good though, because the boss will move around a lot and go back into the ground. Also, attacks are good for when he goes along the ground. This fight's not that tough as the boss doesn't have that much HP. Yes, it can feel like a jumble sometimes, but he's not that tough overall and pretty disappointing for an Act 3 boss. At number 34, we have Father of the Flame. This boss I think is kind of cool as it uses the pogo mechanic a lot. And there are 3 main tools that I'd recommend. 1. The Magma Bell. The Magma Bell will allow you to take 1 damage from fire, so that could be very useful for this fight, like how it's in the 4th course as it constantly spits out fire. Also recommend the Reserve Bind, which allows you to store an extra bind, which for this boss you cannot get silk from, which can make it tough. And I would also recommend the Delver's Drill, as you need to pogo on a ton of things. The Delver's Drill deals a ton of damage for when you do it. The fight could feel overwhelming sometimes with the fire homing in on you and the splash damage that each of them do when they hit the ground. But with using those tools, you could limit the damage and deal extreme damage to the boss, killing it way faster than it could kill you. At number 33, we have the Watcher at the Edge, another Act 3 boss. This boss is kind of fun. The boss only has 2 attacks, with the boss jumping up and slamming down and doing a triple slash. This boss does have a bit higher difficulty due to it blocking a lot of your attacks, but don't fear. There's not really many environmental hazards, and you fought enemies usually before this like Carmelita, Lace, and maybe even Seth, which are much harder than this one. Yes, the boss deals double damage, but overall, I'd recommend using Tax as it moves around on the ground a lot, and maybe even bringing Multi-Binder to get extra health back. But overall, this fight's pretty easy with it only being a 1 phase in Act 3. At number 32, we have Lost Garment. Lost Garment is a pretty cool fight as it uses most of the void attacks and speeds up his attacks from his earlier encounter. However, this fight isn't that tough. It's pretty short due to the boss just not having that much HP, and while it is fast, you could keep your distance on most of the attacks. The issue is though, it's a bit tougher because if you get up close and he does a spray attack, it's a lot more punishing. I'd recommend using some tools like Sting Shard and maybe even Cogwork Wheel that you could keep your distance with. Also, Conch Cutter is good because it'll allow you to bounce it around the room, keep your distance, unlike some tools. Overall, this boss it's harder than the rest, but it's nothing too crazy yet. At number 30, we have Bell Beast. Yes, I know we all know Bell Beast as the doggy and a good boy, but his fight is pretty tough for the beginning. Bell Beast has all double damage attacks, which is extremely surprising for the second boss of the game. He's very similar to Massive Moss Charger, however, he can't be knocked back, and he also can drop bells from the ceiling, which is very annoying at times. Overall, Bell Beast gave me a lot of trouble, and I just recommend trying not to rush in as it could allow him to punish you for double damage, which is extremely brutal at this time in the game. I think Bell Beast is harder than Lace due to just being a tad bit earlier into the game and you have no tools and no dash. At number 29, we have Savage Beastfly. Yes, I'm talking about the Savage Beastfly everyone hates. Overall though, I didn't think the fight was that bad. Yes, it can summon minions, which could be extremely annoying, but if you use tools like Sting Shard, which could allow you to fall out even some of the big boy enemies, it's not too bad. Also, you need to stay very patient with the boss as all double damage attacks, and the boss could just keep on hitting you. You also want to wait for your heal, as if the boss is rushing at you and heal, you just waste an entire thing. This boss can be tough, especially when it starts summoning a good amount of enemies, but I beat it pretty easily on my third try, just from staying patient and keeping my distance and using my tools well. At number 28, we have the Pinstress. This boss isn't that tough as the boss only really has 3 attacks. However, the main difficulty with the boss is not losing your sanity. because the Pinstress, even though for being a Nail Master, loves to just camp in the air and throw little pins at you. This fight is just annoying because you really want to go up there and punish her. However, if you do, she'll most likely hit you with a double damage attack and she'll just whittle you down constantly. You also can't get much health in the fight due to her constantly floating in the air. For this fight, I'd recommend using Tax, as when she dives on the ground, she'll take a lot of damage, and using Cogflies to chip her down. Also, using Tropio Mirrors and Multi-Binder is solid, as you could just get a ton of damage when she goes down on the ground or uses her charge attack. This fight, you need to get quick damage as she goes down very scarcely. At number 27, we have Crust King Khan. This fight was extremely fun because it was just a really cool boss theme, really cool attacks, just really cool boss design overall. However, for being an Act 3 boss and known as one of the rulers of Farum, is pretty pathetic. I know Khan mainly relies on his army, but dang. This boss has Coral that'll shoot out from the ceiling, walls, and floor constantly, and the boss is pretty tanky, and all the attacks do double damage, but for an Act 3 boss it's pretty slow, and yeah, while it covers a large area, just doesn't really work against you as you have a lot of movement. If you're having any troubles, I'd recommend using stuff like Cogwork Wheel and Cogflies to constantly whittle down the boss because of his high HP, and maybe even use Multi-Binder if you're having trouble dodging his attacks, is there's a lot of room where he just won't attack. There's a lot of room where he just can't attack you and won't hit you for a couple seconds. At number 26, we have the Clover Dancers. Yes, I'm putting this below the Cogwork Dancers, but it's mainly because of its position. The Clover Dancers I beat pretty easily compared to the Cogwork Dancers. Still not an easy fight because of a tornado attack, the extra slashes, and the times that it does it during their one attack, and one of the dancers not being able to be attacked. However, I believe it's easier because in Act 3, you know the game more, you have double jump, you have claw line, you have more health, more damage than you did fighting the Cogwork Dancers, but you have little to nothing. This fight can be tough due to the one dancer not being able to be hit, which could allow you to just not see it sometimes due to it being a bit transparent, and allow you to miss a lot of damage, which could prolong the fight, making it a lot tougher. I'd recommend Tax, as sometimes they could just go along the floor, and maybe even using Tropio's Mirrors to just slap them in the face really hard when they get close. At number 25, we have Disgraced Chef Lugoli. This fight is only difficult for one reason: Muck Maggots. Most of the attacks Lugoli has do cover a large area, but yeah, they deal double damage, but she doesn't do them a lot. The Muck Maggots make it bad because they prevent you from healing. That's why I recommend the Multi-Binder, as when you bind you'll still get 2 HP, and because the first heal will remove the Muck Maggots and the second one will heal it with the new update. Lugoli can be tough sometimes, especially when she just starts spamming the Muck Maggots, but overall her attacks aren't that bad, as they have solid telegraph time, and she doesn't really have anything else backing her up, except that she's flying, which can be a bit annoying. At number 31, we have Lace 1. This is the third fight in the game, and usually bosses aren't tough up to this time, but this boss provides a solid challenge, as Lace is the first skilled encounter you have, and it's pretty much a skill check. This boss has 2 double damage attacks with her parry, and one where she sets a circle in the air and does a ton of slashes in it. I'd recommend using the straight pin for this fight, as it will allow you to keep your distance from Lace and not bum rush. That's a big issue. If you bum rush into her, she could easily parry it and get double damage off of you while you only have 5 HP. Overall, this fight's very fun, even this early into the game, but Lace has a lot of HP, which makes it pretty difficult for beginners. At number 24, we have the Cogwork Dancers. The Cogwork Dancers are a fan favorite boss, and I can agree it's one of my favorites too. It's usually the first fight in Act 1, and to me it provides an alright challenge. Overall, the boss is not that difficult as it telegraphs every attack and shows you where everything's going before they do it, but they all do double damage, so it could get kind of overwhelming at the second and third phase. I recommend using Sting Shard like in the Clover Dancers to deal extra damage, especially when they group up, and I'd also recommend Silksong for this fight for when they go into the center, as you could hit them both at the same time. This will make the fight drastically easier, and I just find it harder than the Clover Dancers because it's much earlier into the game, as it's the start of Act 2, unlike Clover Dancers, which is midway through Act 3. At number 23, we have Sister Splinter. I thought Sister Splinter was a pretty fun boss in Shellwood. It can be a bit overwhelming though, especially with the minions. Now that they do single damage, not as bad as before. Before, it'd be way higher on this list. But overall, I think the fight is pretty fun, but can be challenging at times when you get overwhelmed with all the vines, the minions, and the slam downs. I'd recommend using Silk Spear to pierce all the vines when she summons like 4 on each side. It'll allow you to clear up like half of the arena at once. So if you have like 6 silk, you could clear out the entire arena, which makes the fight drastically easier. I'd also recommend having Pullet Pouch on and a certain type of tool like Sting Shard or Freefold Pin, which will allow you to hit the minions, which could make it easier to clear them out, which could act as an environmental hazard if you don't clear them out early. Overall, I think Sister Splinter is tough due to all double damage attacks, except for her minions, and the slam downs, and the minions can be pretty overwhelming at times, but if you use certain tools, you can make quick work of her. At number 22, we have Trobio! I love Trobio, it's a very fun boss. This fight is pretty much where Trobio just throws a ton of stuff around and can create chaos, with him spinning around the arena, creating tornadoes, and his bombs just creating areas where it just makes it much harder to move around. A good strategy for Trobio is to make him come to you instead of playing hyper aggressive, because that could lead to him instantly going into tornado and getting a good hit off of you due to all of his double damage attacks. For tools, I would recommend having Cogwork Wheel to sweep the ground, especially when he's doing the tornado attack from the ground. That especially, and maybe even using Multi-Binder, as sometimes there are some good spots where he just can't hit you for a bit. He does not spam attacks quick as fast as some other bosses, but he can be extremely tough due to just the chaos it could cause. Overall though, Trobio does have some good spaces that you could be in, which you could deal high damage to him, which makes him still tough but not crazy difficult. At number 21, we have Morwing, after the nerf. Morwing is a pretty tough boss, with him having extremely high HP for some reason, and a good amount of double damage attacks except for his Saw Blades. Pre-nerf, his Saw Blades had double damage attacks, which made it extremely tough to beat him. Now he's still tough due to his extremely high HP, and he could snipe you while you're healing. A good strategy I would recommend is actually using the Beast Crest and just continuously pogoing off of him. But remember, when you're doing that, you sometimes need to back up and keep your distance, as he will sometimes flip over or move up a bit. If you're not trying to pogo on him, I'd recommend using Sting Shard, as he'll constantly run into it and it'll just deal heavy damage to the boss. I would also recommend maybe even using Straight Pin just to keep your distance a bit more. But also try to always have Morwing on screen, because if he doesn't, he could hit you with a double damage attack really quick, which will constantly chip away at your health. Overall, Morwing's tough, but compared to pre-nerf, it's not even close. At number 20, we have Broodmother. This boss is just purely annoying because of the constant stuns it gives, and there is little to no way to deal with them, so you just end up running into them, which allows the boss to hit you. The boss has all double damage attacks and constantly summons minions, which, when upon death, do an extra double damage. For this boss, I'd recommend using Sting Shard to clear everything out, and purely just dodge and play patient, as This constant stuns and enemies can throw you off, especially when the boss is constantly diving around at you. It also has an attack that's similar to Gruzmover's attack, however there's a lot more room, so wait till the boss leaps from the ground to dash over her just to make sure you're clear from it. Overall, this boss is mainly tough due to the constant enemies it spawns that upon death do double damage, and the constant stuns, which allows you to just get constantly hit by the double damage attacks. At number 19, we have Phantom. This boss is one of the final bosses of Act 1, and it's pretty tough for the area, but not too bad. This boss has a parry and a double damage slam down that they start to do in their second phase. This boss is mainly tough due to how quick the boss is, and the ability to just teleport into the mist in the second phase. For strategies, I'd recommend you just need to watch where the boss is, because most of their attacks will go into straight lines, so you just need to quickly get out of that line. If you play hyper aggressive, you're going to run into constant parries, which will just chip down your health constantly, and Phantom isn't on screen for that long in second phase, which could mean instant death for you if you're just trying to bum rush in. Overall, I think this boss is tough for Act 1, mainly due to a double damage parry that has when you haven't seen it much other than the Lace fight. At number 18, I put the Second Sentinel. The Second Sentinel is a pretty fun boss in my opinion, and it has a pretty cool moveset. But the boss just feels like it has a good amount of HP for the area, and could just overwhelm you because it has a ranged attack, a parry, and a multi-part attack, which could get very annoying fast. Also, most of the attacks of the boss have double damage. I'd recommend trying to use things like Cogwork Wheel and maybe even Cogflies to chip them down, just because it's pretty tough. And maybe Polyp Pouch to add extra damage, but I'd mainly recommend going Multi-Binder because it'll allow you to heal up 2 double damage attacks at once. This boss fight can last a while, especially due to the chipping, so I'd maybe even recommend using Warding Bell because they used a range attack, which if you heal during a range attack, it will keep you alive. Overall, this fight's pretty difficult due to the boss having multi-hit attacks and nearly all double damage attacks, especially with a parry, which can make the fight tough. But compared to bosses higher up on this list, this boss isn't that much compared to them. At number 17, I put Four Brothers Cygnus and Gron. This fight can be pretty tough for some reasons. For the first part, there's only one of the brothers, yet a crap ton of enemies that you need to kill that have ranged and melee attacks. And then for the second part of the fight, you have both brothers, which can be pretty overwhelming with the constant boomerang attacks, close range, and far range snipes through the spears. And then when one of the brothers goes down, the other one will start summoning lava plumes that will come up, which can make the fight way more challenging, especially when you have less room to work with. I'd recommend using the Magma Bell for this fight as it lowers the fire damage, which could help especially, and Sting Shard to clear off our earlier enemies. Cogflies could be also good for the final part of the fight, as you won't get that many hits off as the brother jumps around a lot during that phase. Overall, I think Four Brothers Cygnus and Gron is pretty difficult as you have a lot of projectiles and a lot going on the screen, but none of the brothers are too particularly difficult on paper. At number 16, I put Grandmother Silk. Even though this fight was a disappointment for being the final boss of Act 2, it still isn't that bad of a fight. In my opinion, it can be kind of overwhelming at times and be very annoying, especially in the second phase when they pull up all the spike areas, which makes it extremely tough to hit the boss, which just forces you to stand there while the boss just constantly hits you. Also, the triple damage attack can throw you off guard, which could hurt you a lot. Overall, this fight is a disappointment and should have been much tougher, but I say it's still pretty tough compared to a good amount of fights in this game just due to the projectile spam Grandmother Silk does, and the triple damage attack which could hit you extremely hard, and has a pretty cool animation. I'd recommend, again, using Sting Shard because it's just very useful. Cog Flies, just because those are extremely useful. And here, if you're risky, use Delver's Drill maybe. Yeah, it's risky, but you could get a lot of damage off on the boss. Overall, I'd say Grandmother Silk is a step above all the bosses we've had, but not too much of a step. At number 15, I put The Unraveled. The Unraveled was a really cool fight to me, but is pretty tough overall. With the boss having a lot of HP, the spears constantly coming down, which could hurt you, especially if you're not paying attention or try to air heal. The enemy spam can be nice because it will give you extra HP, or it could doom you by dealing double damage to everything. The boss also cannot be hit in the head, which makes it really annoying to pogo over them when they're doing their ground sweep attack, and they constantly teleport away, prolonging the fight. They also deal double damage on everything, which could get extremely annoying fast. And when they shoot the enemies out, it almost feels like they're random, and I always get hit by them, which makes the fight pretty tough. I'd recommend Tax and Cogwork Wheel for this fight, as you could chip down the boss really quickly, as they always go on the ground and they have a larger hitbox, which will allow them to hit. I'd also recommend Conch Cutter due to the larger hitbox, because that means the Cogwork Wheel and the Conch Cutter will hit multiple times. Overall, this boss is tough due to the high health, double damage attack, and a prolonged fight, but overall isn't too bad, but hard from Grandmother Silk because of the constant spam. It has a larger spam of projectiles, more HP, and a smaller area to do anything with. At number 14, I put the Raging Conchfly. This is my favorite boss of the game, so I'll try not to be biased. This fight I found pretty tough, mainly due to because, yeah, there's only one Conchfly, but the arena's shortened. So instead of there being like 3 areas they could come out of on the sides, now there's only 2, which makes it a lot more difficult. That means half the time you'll have to jump over it. This fight also has the best work of minions, with the boss using the minions as like a shield, then they'll like come out, or using them for one attack. The boss also is pretty tough, as the 1 damage projectile that bounces around becomes a 2 damage one, which makes it much tougher. Also, the arena is much smaller than the first one, so yeah. And this boss can use its minions to shield itself, has all double damage attacks, and quickly comes by, which means the fight's gonna last a while, unless you hit a really good hit on it. I'd recommend using the Trobio Mirrors and Multi-Binder, as you could get really good damage off the boss in a quick spam, and even using Sting Shard on the side, so that when the boss comes in you get a bit of extra damage. Maybe also use Polyp Pouch to poison the minions, because they could get annoying sometimes, especially when they're grouped up. Overall, this boss fight is tough due to all double damage and the small arena, and I feel like it gets overwhelming a lot faster than the previous fights I mentioned. At number 13, I put Lace 2. I really like this fight. I think this fight is very solid. However, it is very tough, which isn't a bad thing. The music for this fight's amazing, the boss is pretty tough, and the patterns of Lace is very nice. The entire fight is extremely good. Overall, this fight can be tough though, due to all the attacks enhancing, with the lunge having another thing, the circle attack having another one, and all the damage buffing from 1 to 2, and everything can just get overwhelming at times. And don't even try climbing up those walls, because Lace will follow you. And knocking her into the pit below is not like the lava and does much less damage, so it's not even worth it at this point, because your needle has much higher damage. Lace can be tough, mainly due to how she's a skill check boss. It will almost act like the player, and she's tougher than the Conchfly in my opinion, because yes, it's less overwhelming, but you still have to play smart, because she will counter you in every move you mess up. Overall, this fight's tough due to all double damage, all enhanced attacks, which means you constantly have to be on your toes, and you constantly have to dodge, but an extremely fun fight that I'd love to do. I'd recommend using Cog Flies, as those could hit her pretty well, and Tax for when she does her lunge attacks. At number 12, I put Savage Beastfly 2. This fight gets a huge upgrade, because the minions now shoot out little fireballs that will stay on the ground and deal double damage. It's the only one that could spawn, and they are flying, but they always go away from you, which is extremely annoying. And it's over a pit of lava, so every time the Beastfly does his one attack, where he pounces down on everything, it'll knock out a platform, which will make the fight a lot more difficult. This fight took me a couple tries. I'd recommend using Magma Bell, so if you do fall into lava, you only take 1 damage, and the fire attacks only deal 1 damage, so that's pretty nice. Also recommend, if you're an act free, using the Trobio mirrors, as it'll just be nice to hit everything, and with using Multi-Binder, you'll get an extra heal pretty much. And for tools, probably Sting Shard, or maybe you could use Volt Vessels, as you could aim them to hit the little guys, which is very, very useful. And also, if you just hit the Beastfly, it does very solid damage. Overall, this fight is tough due to the lava pit and minions constantly shooting out little fireballs, which makes you want to jump off a cliff. But it's doable. You just need to focus on getting rid of the minions, if you just give full focus to Beastfly and nothing else. At number 11, I put Bell Eater. Yes, I know some find it easy, but it just posed a huge challenge to me. The really tough part about the fight is you could only hit the boss in the butt of it and the top of it, which makes the fight prolonged and really, really annoying to face. I'd recommend using Silksong for the fight, because you could hit both or just hit one from an angle, which is good. The main challenge comes from both parts constantly spewing out projectiles, which makes it really hard to land a ton of hits. For this fight, if you've beaten Trobio already, I recommend you use his double mirrors and Multi-Binder, which will allow you to do huge burst damage. For tools, I'd recommend Cogfly, as you can just get some good hits on them without even being near it. For this fight, you have to play patient and just get your hits in when you can, and at least try to dodge. All the attacks are double damage, and sometimes it can just prolong the fight and be extremely annoying, especially when you think you have the projectile range for the bombs when you aren't. Overall, this fight is tough, but it's doable. At number 10, I put First Sinner, one of my favorite bosses in the game. This boss had me jam into its soundtrack, and in my opinion, it's pretty tough, mainly due to all the needles that it uses, that it throws at you, and especially the ability to heal on its own, which can get very annoying fast. I'd recommend trying to use Claw Line to get to the boss quickly to stop its healing. The main difficulty comes through the fight though in phase 2, when the boss just starts spamming everything it has. This can get really annoying, as it can do 2 attacks at once, which can get really annoying, especially with the Rune Rage, which covers a lot of the screen and the constant healing. All the attacks do double damage in this fight, which can get really annoying fast. I'd recommend using Claw Line, like I said earlier, to grapple onto the boss, and I'd also recommend, you have to play very aggressive here, so I'd maybe recommend using stuff like Cogwork Wheel to get in close, just because if you don't, the boss will heal, and you need to chip down its health pretty fast because it has very high health. The main difficulty from this fight comes from the boss just constantly punishing you, so it's really tough, but I'd recommend using Claw Line, like I said earlier, to get in close, and that's really the only thing. Overall, this fight's pretty tough for being a top 10 boss, and the next ones are only going to get more difficult. At number 9, I put Widow. The main difficulty from this fight comes from the fact that you haven't faced many speed demons like Widow yet, with the only comparable one in speed being Lace, who is not nearly as tough as Widow. This fight, Widow has some double damage attacks, and a good amount of non-double damage, mainly coming from the bells she brings up. She also has an attack that can hit 2 times in a row for double damage, which I got hit by my first couple times, and it's extremely, extremely annoying. Widow is tough because, like I said before, you haven't faced any speed demons. I'd recommend using the only tools you pretty much have access to: Straight Pin, Pull-Up Pouch, and Sting Shard, as you don't really have access to many more. This fight's tough, especially in the second phase where everything starts moving faster with more bells being thrown at you, and especially the ability to constantly break out in slashes. This fight's tough due to the inability to have that much knowledge and practice against faster bosses, which, yeah, well, in comparison, is not as tough as future bosses, is much tougher as you have not faced anything like it yet in this game. At number 8, I put Scar Singer Carmelita. While many think this fight is top 2 or 3 potential, I don't think so. Carmelita is tough, don't get me wrong. She has a block, great health, some of the attacks can be very annoying to dodge, and yes, double damage in the arena before. However, she feels pretty slow to me overall. I do think Widow's has faster attacks than her. Yeah, I could understand how it's overwhelming, but for the projectiles, you could hit them to get rid of them pretty much. And for her attacks, when she turns into a spiky ball and she slams down, you could just jump up and start pogoing on her. So it's pretty simple. And there's even a spot in the arena at the top that makes it so if you heal, she can't hit you. This fight, though, does pose a challenge mainly due to the double damage, the huge moveset that the boss has, and the huge chunk of HP. I recommend using some charms like the Trobio Mirrors and Multi-Binder, Sting Shard, and Cogwheel Wheel to get rid of nearly all her health. I would also recommend maybe even using Conch Cutter to help with the arena, because that can be extremely annoying. Overall, Carmelita is a tough boss due to the high HP, all double damage, and the crazy moveset, but I don't think it's that tough because she just feels a lot slower to me compared to other bosses. But still, a very difficult fight. At number 7, I put Tormented Trobio. This fight is very fun. I love this fight. I use it as a warm-up when I'm trying to move on to some of the modded bosses, and let me tell you, it can be tough. While Trobio did not change up his moveset that much, having similar moves, he's amplified all of them. The balls that I used to fire out, the firework balls, now go in both directions that form a cross pattern. And he also just has more of everything. And when he has the little firework circles, he now shoots out a thing that will rather go in an X fashion or up on the top and vertical and horizontal cross. He will also, when he goes into his tornado, he will summon mini explosions behind him. This fight is absolute chaos. There's a ton going on, all double damage. You'll get hit a lot and die a good amount. Yeah, Trobio himself isn't that much different, but in my opinion, it's way more difficult from the first fight due to just being so overwhelmed with everything. Honestly, I don't recommend many tools here. If any, I'd recommend some tools like maybe Cogwheel Wheel because he gets on the ground a good amount, and even Conch Cutter because he will go into the air some, and it doesn't take up that much blur. I'd also recommend Multi-Binder. Is there some spots where, especially when he's doing his tornado attack, where he just can't hit you? So that's good, and you could just get your health back. Overall, this fight's tough, mainly due to just the amount of stuff going on, which has not been seen in a fight before, in my opinion. There's just so much going on, which is why this boss easily makes the 7th place. At number 6, we have Nihilith. This is a hot take, I know. I think Nihilith was easily the hardest of the main 3 bosses in Act 3. The main issue is the boss has a ton of get off me attacks compared to any of the others, and with no floor, it makes it really, really annoying. Love the fight, don't get me wrong, I love it. But I just think it's very tough, especially with all the get off me attacks, the projectile spam, and it could just get really annoying fast. I mean, you could especially get caught off guard, in my opinion, by the tons of slashes Nihilith will do around herself when you're right near her. And especially when she'll do the pollen area, in my opinion, it's just very tough to instantly get off of her and then get to the other side really quick, which makes it extremely tough. I'd recommend using Cogflies and maybe even throwing Polyp Pouch on for this, and again, using Sting Shard. Love that tool. Trobio Mirrors could also be good, as you could just get near her and just hit her really hard, and Conch Cutter also, as because she has a larger hitbox, it will just constantly hit her a ton. This fight, in my opinion, is tougher as all the double damage attacks, the no floor, and yeah, you could poke her, which does make the fight a lot easier, and I know that's what you're supposed to do, but Still, in my opinion, the combination with the get off me attacks, no floor, and projectile spam makes this fight extremely tough. We're at the top 5 hardest bosses now, so I don't think we're going to count. I just think we should go on to the next one. So next up, we have Grohl the Great. This fight, I know it's extremely hated, but I actually love this fight. Do I think it's tough though? Absolutely. The main difficulty comes from the enemy arena before, which could make you run out of tools and just hurt you a lot. However, I also like the enemy arena. For the enemy arena, I'd recommend Volt Vessels as it'll hit the ground and enemies near it, and Sting Shard as it could catch enemies off guard. Also, using Reef of Purity for this fight can be extremely good, as falling into the Muck Maggots, it won't affect you as bad. And then when Big Bad Grohl comes out, it's where it gets tough. My main strategy for this fight is charge attacks. I know, not popular for charge attacks. They're extremely good for this fight. Mainly because you never want to be so close to Grohl due to his suck attack and his acid spit attack, so I'd recommend just charge up, go in for a quick hit, back out. Also using tools like the Pompeo, I don't recommend it, but you can use it for when he sucks in to deal a bit of extra damage. I don't use it though. This fight's tough because of the Muck Maggots especially, double damage attacks, and Grohl just being an asshole sometimes, and especially the constant enemies, the traps, in the enemy arena first and a run back. But even though with all that, I think it's a pretty fun boss, and it's extremely difficult, and that's what I love about the fight. Next up, I put Chakra. Yeah, I know that it's a duel you could do, but I find this fight extremely infuriating, mainly due to Chakra's ability to just spam the amount of projectiles she wants. I know that they're single damage, but it makes this fight so infuriating. It took me about 8 tries to beat her. In the previous ones, have taken me less than that. This fight is infuriating. If you want to heal, nope, you can't heal because of the constant spam of projectiles. They'll just knock you out of it. And when you're just standing there, it's just really annoying. I know you can hit him with your needle, but still, you're trying to focus on where you can get a hit. Then she'll randomly go in for those quick little dives. It made this fight really annoying. I'd recommend Cogflies to maybe get a hit off her, and Tax for when she does go on the ground to deal good damage. That's it. That's legitimately it, and I hate it. Because this fight made me want to break my controller. It was tough. Just due to the constant projectile spam, this fight easily earned its space up here with the constant bouncing gosh darn rings. Love the character, the boss infuriating me a lot. Now we have the Judge, and in that I mean Last Judge. This boss, I know that I put it up this high, but it's mainly because it took me a while to beat when I first did it. Last Judge is a force to be reckoned with. Who's known as the Guardian of Act 2, Guardian of the Citadel? Yeah, I understand why. This boss is extremely tough due to the huge AoE of all the attacks, large just jump of HP compared to other bosses, and just does not give a crap. They even have a special attack in their second phase where they're just constantly going to repeat the fire circle attack multiple times. There's only one tool I could really recommend here, and that's got to be the Magma Belt. Second phase will nerf the damage down to 1. Very useful. But still, just a constant spam of attacks. And yeah, I love this boss. Just saying, I love this boss. It's extremely tough though. Double damage, huge AoE, pretty quick honestly. Yeah, you could get good hits, but she has a crap ton of HP. Last Judge easily earned her spot up here as one of the hardest bosses in the game. The number one hardest boss in Silksong, in my opinion, easily goes to Shrine Guardian Seth. This boss is very difficult in my opinion, mainly due to his shield mechanic, which blocks a ton of attacks. And yes, I'm talking to you Wanderer's Crest players, it's much harder to bum rush in and just constantly hit them, which makes strategies like the Wanderer's bum rushing a lot less effective and forces you to play along with the boss. This fight makes so you don't control the tempo, the boss controls you, which can be hard to adjust to. Boss also has a good amount of double damage attacks, fake out attacks, and a wide range of moves. Boss also has second phase where they just become much faster than before. For tools, I'd recommend bringing Trobio's Mirror and Multibinder to get quick bursts of damage off the boss. Also recommend Tax and maybe even Cogflies. It'll allow you to just get a lot of damage as Seth goes along the ground a lot in this fight for most of his attacks. This fight is tough, it's going to take you a while. Seth has a huge sheer amount of health, so you need to do anything you can to chip it down. I'd recommend trying to play safer, as Seth can easily catch you off guard and just start comboing you. So bum rushing in is not a good idea. Yes, I'm talking to you Wanderer Crest players again. Okay? Overall, just due to the boss's shield, high HP, tons of attacks, and its combos can make this fight extremely difficult. And this is why I say it's the hardest boss in Silksong, in my opinion. Oh, Lace, how could I forget about you? Yeah, the number one actual hardest boss in this game is actually Lost Lace. This boss is not like any other boss. This boss, and I've counted, has over 15 different attacks with different variations. This boss legitimately took me around 25 to 30 tries. It's that tough. It has the largest health pool in the game, and Lace blends in with the color of her attacks. She will legitimately, when she summons void tendrils out of the ground, will hide in it. She also has the ability of all void enemies, for when she hits you, she takes away a bar of silk, which is extremely infuriating, especially when you're getting hit constantly. She has the constant void attacks and just makes them worse. She will also use the void tendril in her first phase to just mix up with her own attacks. She'll summon void tendrils when she does her lunge 3 times, which makes it pretty much impossible to pogo on her. Still possible, but extremely tough. She also has an attack where she'll summon a giant, massive void to come after you, which you'll have to jump in. You have to double jump over and usually claw line over to make sure you're not dead. She also has a triple damage attack in her final phase where she'll summon a ton of slashes, then dive down to the ground, causing void tendrils to raise up. Yeah, this fight is difficult. Her parry's also quicker. All double damage attacks. As I said before, huge health pool. I'd recommend using Tax. That's pretty much it. Trobio's Mirrors can be especially good, same with Multibinder like before, because you need to get huge instances of burst damage on her to kill her. This boss is tough. She will counter your move, she'll constantly parry, she will constantly summon void tendrils and hide in her own attack. This fight easily earns the reputation of being, in my opinion, the hardest fight in Silksong. Just from double damage, health, camouflage in her own attacks, and a large array of all the different attacks makes this fight very, very difficult, and known as the hardest boss in Silksong at the current moment.